We went over search campaigns in early videos, but that was specifically for brand. So brand search and then generic search are very different types of campaigns. You use different match types, different bidding strategies, and we're gonna kind of walk through a scenario for each, because sometimes in search you want to be really inexpensive in your CPCs, looking for a specific type of person, but may not have a really nailed down keyword. Or the other way, where you have your keywords really optimized, you are looking for position, you are gonna want to really own a market for a small group of keywords that potentially may not scale. So we are going to go through couples of different scenarios. Let's find the pros and cons for each, and I will tell you exactly how to beat Google at its own game. So this should be a very familiar screen to everyone. This is when you are clicking on create a new campaign, and there is a few different ways that you can run a search campaign. For the most part, it's going to be really simple, just set it up without a goal guidance. It's a search campaign, you don't really necessarily need to choose a campaign objective, it's just going to choose a bidding strategy for you. But we are going to discuss different bidding strategies and why they're useful in each scenario. But we are just going to click create campaign without goal guidance and then click search. Again, choose whatever conversion actions you want to track for search. It could be phone calls, it could be imported leads that you are counting. So just choose the specific conversion goals that are right for you. You can skip this part here, and I'm just going to call this a search campaign. So bidding strategy again. This is where things get a little bit wonky. Here you can choose a different bidding strategy that would probably work better for you with an exact or phrase match, but right now it's not giving us any choice. We have to choose an automated bidding strategy, which is why it's called you versus Google. If you want to use manual, you have to choose another bidding strategy and then afterwards go back in and change it. This one here is maximize conversions, and this one is maximize conversion value. You can set a TROAS or you can set a target CPA. I always would recommend using a conversion-based bidding strategy. If you want to run manual, that's gonna be a different scenario, and we will talk about that afterwards. But for broad match, which is what we are talking about now, we are going to create a broad match search campaign, and we are going to really need an automated bidding strategy because broad match can go, like its name, extremely broad. You can have 5 keywords showing up, for no joke, for 10,000 different variations of that word. If you're optimizing for clicks, you are going to get some relevant, some irrelevant, and that's it. Google did his job. It says, I got you the most amount of relevant and irrelevant clicks. Well, that's bad, because you got the most of irrelevant clicks you could. So you kind of asked what you wanted from Google. Same thing with impression share. Impression share is going to move you up to the specific impression share that you want, whether it's first page, top of page, or number 1. But again, the intent of the user is not taken into consideration with those bidding strategies, so you are not necessarily optimizing for conversions. You may want them, you probably do want them, but don't focus on volume or position in a broad match campaign. You want to use conversions or conversion value if you are choosing a value for the specific type of conversion. So for the people that are just starting out, there are cases for maximize clicks. Use maximize clicks especially with exact match. If you know the exact phrases that converted, then use it with maximize clicks on those phrases. What maximize click does is it starts at the bottom of the page, sometimes page 2, and slowly works its way up in CPCs to gain the most amount of clicks for your daily ad spend. The problem is when you look at the conversions and then you look at the close rate, your close rate is often lower because what you are doing is you are putting yourself at about 3rd or 4th on the page, potentially at the bottom. And if you are looking for a dentist office or you are trying to get a local appointment from your neighborhood and you are the 3rd or 4th considered, sometimes it means that they couldn't work with the 1st or 2nd. And then they get to you and they say, yes, I come to you and I have these medical plans that no one else takes. And you're like, yeah, I don't take it either. So now you are getting conversion, but they are not actually turning into sales. I would say that if you wanted to find a good position without having to run manual, you can run exact match on maximize clicks and give it about 2 weeks at a healthy enough budget and then say, okay, I can get a 60% top search impression share at $287 for these keywords, and then you turn into manual, and then you take it to $87, you bump it up to $325, and you try to get a good second position, and you nailed it. Cool, so we are going to take conversions. I'm not going to use a target CPA. Google says you can get more conversions at a similar CPA and staying unconstrained by budget. It's so funny too because they say unconstrained by budget, but in reality what this does is constrain the budget. I'm gonna put this at $50. Target cost per acquisition tells Google do not spend a dime unless you are fairly certain that you are gonna get a conversion at $50 or under. And Google says, okay, but if Google says this conversion is going to cost me $91, it says I'm just not going to show my ads because I'm going to fall outside the goal. So when it says unconstrained, it's incorrect. What this will do is if you hit target CPA and you type in 40 and I've set my budget to $1,000 a day, it's gonna spend, let's say, $200 of it, and now we are done. But then when you turn this off, for example, and you find that it starts to test more, and sometimes I've seen the CPA lower because what Google doesn't know about a person is if they are going to convert or not. So it hides. But if it did show, would they have converted? We don't know. So sometimes you can actually get the same or lower CPA by removing that target CPA. If you're an emergency clinic, how is Google going to ever use its historical information about a user to show your ad or not? Whether you are an 18-year-old male or a 71-year-old female, there's nothing about your demographics that's going to be a signal to Google. So what's interesting is that it starts to limit its knowledge about person. It says, well, this person likes football, they watch night shows on TV. I don't think that this person is going to convert because they typed in my dog is choking on a chew toy. It kind of becomes irrelevant and situational at that point. It's different than demographics, so understand your audience and understand that Google is going to make predetermined decision based on what it thinks a user is going to or is not going to convert on emergency short sales cycles, for example, emergency plumber, basically anything that is going to be like, I just need help. So what all these automated bidding strategies do is hurt your campaigns because they don't know if a person is going to convert because it's a situational issue. So just know that. Cool, so here we see Google again screws us up. Search partners should be tested but should be monitored. So here's the Google Display Network and then here's search partners. Here's a Google Display Network campaign of one of our clients. Now this doesn't look that good. Out of $2,000 they spent $300 on the display network and they got 0 conversions. But at the top it was getting 258 conversion at $6. So that's huge. Google $6 conversions, display network 0, and they spent about 15% of their budget on it. So when I say Google Display Network, absolutely watch it. All you have to do is go into your campaigns, click segment, click top versus other, and it will tell you where your ads are showing. So let's turn those off because that's just not a good idea. Here how display works is when you run out of search audience, it takes the delta between what you've spent and what your daily budget is and just blows it on a random audience on display. Locations. Again, it's up to you, whatever your location needs to be. Just make sure that you open up these location options and tick this box here because we don't want people who have shown interest in your target locations like United States because our ad will show obviously in different countries. Anybody that has an interest in the United States will see our ads. For search, I actually use all languages because you are going to be bidding on search terms. Audience segmentation. This one you can overlay an observation, which I think is a good idea. Be very careful with this change very often, so what I mean by that is if we are looking at autos and vehicles, and we are looking at specifically motor vehicles, this is usually a fairly static audience. Now there is outliers that sometimes mess you up, so what I mean by that is in October, November, 90% of all conversions in pretty much every account in the United States have like holiday shoppers and Black Friday shoppers and things that are seasonal. So just know that this is not a static in-market audience. They flow between in-market and out of market. So don't treat this as a static audience and be careful about it. I usually like to pick observation. Then make bidding adjustments when you want and only on manual, because target CPA just kind of ignores your bid adjustments anyway, so just know that's the things here. Audience segments you choose depending on the industry. Ad rotation, leave that alone. I don't even know why they even offer this. What's funny is you can pick do not optimize. and then when you create the campaign, auto apply comes in and changes that for you. Start date and end date, leave that alone. Add schedule. Again, this may be relevant to you in search campaign if you have a brick and mortar location and people that need to answer the phone. But no, you are missing out on people that are finding you the day before, then calling you the day after, because they couldn't call you the day before. So just know about that. We're gonna skip UTM parameters and dynamic search ads. We are not talking about that in this video. Alright, now we are going to use keywords and ads. What you are going to do actually is to enter your website URL, and I'm going to ask it to give me keyword suggestions. This area right here is exactly the same as you went to Keyword Planner and you paste your website in there. Okay, so everything we knew about match types is gone now. Broad match is still very broad. Phrase match is more like broad match modifier used to be, and exact match is now phrase match, and there is no such thing as exact match anymore. So this is a broad match of keyword 24-hour animal vet. What this will do is broadly match to any search term that is closely related. So this could be 24 animals, that could be like all-day pet hospital, it can even just be vet. So it's really an articulation of intent. Hey Google, we want people whose intent could be a 24 animal vet. And then Google from AI perspective says, okay, I think someone who wants to tranquilize a horse needs a 24 animal vet. What's really scary is like these things will go very broad. So when you are talking about maximize clicks, you are gonna get every relevant and irrelevant search term regardless. Anybody go into Google and type in a question that has to do about animal health, you're gonna show up. That's the bad part. Because with maximized conversions, it says I've gotten 3 clicks in the last 3 days of how to tranquilize a horse, and I didn't see conversions. I'm gonna stop showing up for that keyword. So it has a fail-safe in there that it will stop overspending for keywords that do not convert. Those keywords that do not convert are the irrelevant ones. You can negative out those irrelevant search terms, but just know that you are police that show up like after a murder to try to stop it from happening again. That search term was how to tranquilize a horse. But then the other search was can a horse die after being tranquilized? Then you're showing up for that one and you're like, oh god, I already got negative that one out. Broad match is going to be all the different ways, shapes and forms that people can type in anything related to keywords you give it. If you have a good search volume for keywords, 90% of that will be close enough, and it will be 90% effective, and over time you will be 99% effective after about 3 months. Especially with animal emergency clinic, people are panicking, they're looking for someone now. You wouldn't want to use broad when you are not going to want to show up for every single variation of pet emergencies. You want to be found at the top, because these are people that will pay thousands of dollars to the first person that answers the phones, because you know Pluto is throwing up constantly. For example, if I use phrase match, now what this is going to do is you will get terms like 24 animal vet open now, animal clinic, animal hospital. Exact match, it's still not going to be exact match, you will get just much closer. So a 24 animal vet might be animal vet that's open 24 hours or animal vet that's open now. If we are talking about exact match or phrase match, or we are talking about needing to show up fairly frequently at the top, you are going to want to use a manual bidding strategy. You are going to want to bid to a very specific placements. That's going to be very important. Broad match, it doesn't help you if you have an emergency situation and you are at the bottom of the page. It's the same thing with calling 911. That's why there is only one number for it. You can't just call private hospital and be like, what do you charge for this and this? It doesn't work like that. That's an emergency, you need it now. So the same thing with emergency plumbing and animal services, whatever it may be that has a high sense of urgency. Bid for position, and that's a use case for exact. On broad, you are not always at the top. You are at the top when certain criteria is met. Whereas that's a good keyword that shows a good amount of conversions, and then it will bid fairly aggressively. It can still work well, but generally you are not breaking into like 95% of top search impression share, which means number 1 at all. It just doesn't work that way, because to maximize conversions, you need to pay less cost per click to get more clicks and to get more conversions. That's how you maximize the conversions. Ads. Again, I'm just gonna skip the ad build because it's very individual. Phone number can be really important if you are lead generation. The headline and the ad strengths, we discussed this in our brand campaign. Leave your ad headlines not pinned because otherwise you are gonna give lower ad strengths. Does it really matter? A little bit. You can see a little bit of variation between CPC, but it really depends on if that keyword is getting conversions. Sometimes you will have a low ad strengths, but you get 15% click-through rate and $4 conversions. I would say it's going to be really important for a really well diverse ad, especially if you're going to pay for the top placement with phrase or exact on manual. You want to make sure that your ad is very well built, because when you bid for position, any chance that you can get to lower your CPC by having, let's say, a good strength with a well diversified ad, it's going to save you a lot of pennies, probably about $2 or $3 of cost per click, at least for having a good top placement with a good ad strength. To give you an idea for, let's say, an emergency clinic type of keyword, if I go into the keyword planner, for example, and I will type 24-hour vet clinic, we can see that it's going to cost you $55. So just know that this is well known in Google Ads, that if you have something of high value to a person that is needing it quickly, that top position becomes very expensive. Also, if we type in drive while intoxicated attorney, it will cost you about $100 per click to be at the top. So you can get some really crazy CPCs because potentially this could be thousands and thousands of dollars in profit. I'm going to share with you how this looks in real time because I think this can also give you some insights into how this looks. I sorted by average cost, descending. My average cost is $30, my CPC bids are 100, manual, because I'm looking for a very high placement. Now you will see the exact match here. I'm using all of my good quality keywords and I'm paying sometimes $100 or sometimes $23. It's just depending upon who I'm competing with. If you look at last week, you will see something died off very quickly and then those things started seeing come back. On the left this is a $70 bid and on the right this is $100 bid. I was still paying $30 though, but what happened is we had competitor hop in and outbid us by about 5% and just kill the whole entire business. That was the craziness about bidding into positioning, where if you have a good position, you can get the 9 to 10% conversion rate, which is really good, but you need to be at the first position, meaning my search top impression share should be from 70% to 90%. Also, the cost per conversion is $600, but the average annual emergency vet bill is $3,000. But if we were on broad, nothing worked.